Need parts now? O'ReillyAuto.com offers in-store pickup, same-day home delivery, or next-day home shipping. Get more parts your way at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
The sun's shining, birds are singing, and all feels right in the world.
Until the season changes, and suddenly you lose your motivation to get out of bed. In fact, 1 in 5 people experience some form of depression, no matter the season or time of year.
At the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, our vision is to build a mentally healthy nation for all, because we want you to live your best life and be your best you all year round.
Please visit mentallyhealthynation.org to learn more.
It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Sena, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Jamie Dew. I am the host and curator of the SNL Hall of Fame. Welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast, where each week we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the 30 nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity. Before we go any further, though, I'm going to ask you to please wipe your feet before entering the hall. Once you do that, you can move right past the llamas exhibit and make a hard right at the Weekend Update booth exhibit. You know what I'm trying to say. It's an exhibit. This is a museum. Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't that be cool? Oh my gosh, I think it would be so cool. Speaking of cool, this week's episode features our very own Thomas Sena speaking with Will Norman, who you may have heard on the SNL Network Character Countdown podcast. This is just a fantastic conversation, and it's about Alec Baldwin. Interesting, a very interesting person. Somebody that I would have said 6 years ago was a first ballot Hall of Famer, slam dunk. I mean, he's got all sorts of records. He's got a fantastic track record. He's got great characters. But there's one character in particular that he has played maybe a few too many times that has put a bad taste in people's throat at this point. And a bad taste in your throat? No, a bad taste in your mouth. Yeah, a bad taste in your mouth. That's what I'm trying to say. And you know, as such, I think it could be dicey. Now onward to our friend Matt Ardill, who I have kept locked up in the janitor's closet for the last week. Matt, how are you doing in there?
I am great. Thanks, Jamie. And you?
I am wonderful. We're talking Alec Baldwin today, right?
Yes, Alexander Ray Baldwin III. If there's anybody who's going to have that real name, that would be Alec Baldwin.
Get out.
Yeah. He's. You gotta love Alec Baldwin, and for a lot of people, you gotta hate Alec Baldwin. He's a very divisive and interesting person. He born April 3rd, 1958, one of 5 siblings. His first time hosting was April 21st, 1990, season 15. This was back when he was pretty Alec Baldwin in those early years. Yeah. So along with with the B-52s as the musical guest on that first episode. So this is the Dana Carvey, Mike Myers peak era, where Wayne's World is all the rage. He became a 5-timer December 10th, 1994 in season 20. So he was the third 5-timer that was actively inducted after Tom Hanks and Danny DeVito, there's a little bit of controversy there, though, because Danny DeVito actually had to host 6 times because they didn't count his co-hosting episode with Rhea Perlman.
Oh.
But
what about Baldwin and...
Exactly. They counted the Baldwin-Kim Basinger episode So it's like a bit of a double standard going on there. I mean, I think it's because he's just so pretty. Danny DeVito was going around taking pictures on his feet with probably like a giant camera back then, and Alec Baldwin was so pretty. He's like, oh, we'll give it to him. Now he's actually one of the hosts who have hosted the most episodes. He's done 17 episodes as of recording, which is a record number. His most recent was in February 11th of 2017, and he is one of 4 platinum lounge members. So that is the next tier up from the 5-timers. That's for anybody who's been a host, guest, performer, or special guest 12 times or more.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Who are the other 3? Do you know?
That is John Goodman, Chevy Chase, and Steve Martin.
Ah, excellent.
So, yeah. If you, I rewatched the sketch where they did that, and Martin Short works waiting tables in the Platinum Lounge.
Of course he does.
And that feels appropriate. That feels about right. Yeah, I mean, he's had some great characters over the years. Some impressions that I have become very tired of, or one impression in particular that I have become very tired of.
He shall who not be named.
Yeah, which he did, what I believe, 46 times.
No
did that impression.
way. Wow,
Yes.
no wonder we're so tired of it.
Yeah, it's just overkill. It's just overkill. And prior to that, though, he had made 10 other guest cameos. So it was clear that he had a great love of SNL. I mean, you don't collaborate with Tina Fey for possibly one of his most successful roles as Jack Donaghy in 30 Rock, which garnered him 19 Primetime Emmy Award nominations, and I believe it's 4 wins that he got there. But he love him or hate him, you got to credit him for being willing to lean into the most bonkers sketches. Yeah. I mean, Sweaty Balls, Canteen Boy, The Joe Pesci Show. I mean, these are all sketches that are like, it's a brave thing to be willing to do that. Do you have a favorite sketch of his?
Oh, I love his Tony Bennett. So anytime he does that, I think that's just swell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's Sweaty Balls, just because it's like so NPR.
Right.
It's just like it's so dirty and so silly, but it's delivered in such a low key manner, and he keeps it together, and the entire cast of that sketch just do that pitch perfect NPR voice.
Yeah.
And it's dirty, punny wordplay, and it's such a great treat to listen to.
Will Norman, thank you so much for joining me today on the SNL Hall of Fame.
Of course, Tom's happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Will, you and I were on our friends, the Saturday Night Network's Character Countdown podcast not too long ago, and that was a whole lot of fun. We had a great time talking about characters and stuff, so I got your perspective on how you feel about characters on Saturday Night Live and what you look for there, but I am curious about what you look for in a great SNL host.
I think there's definitely a lot of crossover, because I think the best hosts are able to bring some characters to it. But now we're talking about all-time hosts. I think one thing that there are a few things that come to mind is, for one, you want someone that comes and is excited, and I think is a fan of the show. When someone comes ready to play and they really appreciate the show and love the show, and that energy comes through in their monologue and the energy they bring to all the sketches that they're in. Just really want someone who really loves the show, that you can see that appreciation come through. I'm a sucker for people that talk about loving the show before they were hosting, or how hosting is their dream come true. I think that's always really, really cool. I think having great comedic timing and I really prefer comedians or great actors, because they come to the show with that perspective, and they're also able to play many different characters and be able to be within that moment and really inhabit those characters and stuff when they come to play. And then I think, last but not least, I think just really high energy. When someone comes in and they're really they put their all into every sketch that they're in. They're really excited to be there. Nothing worse than having a host that just feels like they're being held hostage, and they're not excited to be there. So those are probably the main things that I look at. I think those are things that go into having a really good host. And it's kind of a side note. I think we all kind of do it right at the good nights. I'm always looking to see how the cast reacts to the host being there. And sometimes you can just kind of tell when the cast just loves them and they're so excited and they're clapping behind them and they're hugging them after the show after like a long week with them. So I love looking for those kinds of things when someone comes in to host.
Yeah, we all become body language doctors in a sense, like with the good nights, whether it's a cast member who we see that might have a frown on their face or how they're interacting with the host. It's kind of fun to play body language doctor.
Yeah, definitely every week.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you brought up a great point about hosts that are good actors. And I think it doesn't even have to be a comedic actor. I think a lot of the best hosts, have a lot of range, and a lot of the best hosts show their chops in dramatic acting before SNL. And the guy who we're talking about today, Alec Baldwin, he had a mix of a little bit of both before his first hosting stint. He was in Beetlejuice, which was more comedic. He was in Working Girl, a bit of a comedy there, talk radio, Married to the Mob. So he was promoting actually The Hunt for Red October, which I probably allowed him to showcase more of a range. So I think Alec fits into that perfectly. As far as he goes, I mean, what boxes did Alec check for you as an SNL host?
I think there's quite a few. I mean, for one, I think having that background in acting, I think was really important and really helpful because, he was very, very versatile in the type of characters that he was able to come to and perform and got to show a different side of himself. I mean, Beetlejuice, obviously a really great movie. He's playing more of a straight man in that movie to a degree, right? Playing like Michael Keaton and whatnot, but like being able to show a different side of yourself and that comedic timing, which helped him to really commit. I think he's also, he was very popular, like a very charming person, from the way that he presented himself in sketches and everything, and really leaned into being someone that was really popular with, some of with the audience. And then I think also just his willingness, I think the willingness to, it kind of take it for granted, but the willingness to come back to like do a good job and then still be able to say, can I get a volume out of this? It's not just like, okay, do a good job and then kind of be off, leave or avoid times in his life where he might not have wanted to come back. Still just kind of keeping that trend going and being willing to come and play and being versatile with multiple generations of the show. I think that's something that's also pretty cool. There's some hosts that have been kind of belong to certain eras and belong to certain casts, and he's been able to, come back and add those comedic sensibilities in the show and obviously off the show. I know it's not 30 Rock podcast, but being able to see how he's able to translate that over, I think was the things that really hit for me.
Yeah, one of those boxes, the willingness to come back. I mean, Alec checked that time and again. He checked that 17 times. Like, he had no problem,
exactly.
Obviously, coming back. That's kind of bearing the lead, probably, that he still holds the record for most hosting appearances at 17. So, yeah, you're just so right. I think we kind of look for similar things in SNL hosts, and Alec checks so many of those boxes. And I wanted to bring up actually his very first hosting stint. And we could kind of bounce around a little bit, but I think it's important when talking about Alec Baldwin to bring up his first hosting stint, which was April 21st, 1990. That was at the end of season 15. And I think he just proved right away that he was just so willing to play off his persona, but not make the show all about him, which is something that I look for in a good host too, is, show your personality, but not to the detriment of the material. I don't think the show needs to completely revolve around the host's personality, but you want the host to show their personality still. So that first episode, you had talked about how, his charisma, charming, he had a fun, simple monologue right away where he's just kind of posing for the camera, showing his charisma right away and everything. So that was kind of our introduction to Alec Baldwin in that first monologue right away. Did you get a chance to kind of go back and check some stuff out from that first show in particular?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think one of the things that's kind of fun, and you just talked about it a little bit too, was like the willingness to put yourself out there, but willingness to make fun of yourself too. You kind of have to be able to lean into your persona and lean to things that, are the reason why you were even asked to do the show in the first place, but then still be able to take a step back and be a part of the show and just kind of be, whether it's in a lead role or a support role to the show. So like I said, it's kind of watching is like, it's very obvious why he was kind of an instant hit, and then being able to come back too since then. Like there's not few times, but there's those moments where you see someone hosting and they come in for the first time and you're like, man, I can't wait to have this person come back again, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But yeah, I thought he's like a natural right away.
Yeah, throughout that whole episode, I mean, it was quite the range. He did this soap opera sketch called Green Hilly, where it's just kind of him kissing everybody in the whole show to this dramatic music. He kissed Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, Nora Dunn, Phil Hartman, the dog in the sketch. Alec was just kind of kissing everybody, playing off of his whole leading man, charming kind of persona. He did a fun sketch with Jan Hooks. She played Greta Garbo, and she was kind of reclusive, so he played, I think, her personal assistant or something, who when people would call for and ask for Greta Garbo, he was miming excuses. Or Greta Garbo was miming excuses, and Alec had to guess what she was trying to mime. That was goofy Alec right there, taking part in nonsense.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it too. Like, you want to have someone who's able to be the straight man, so to speak, when sketches when you need them to, be able to do those kinds of silly things, like be able to act with their body. I mean, there's obviously a lot of material that like we'll get to like over the course of his appearances, but kind of showed off the whole art. He's shown off the whole arsenal multiple times, but especially coming in hot, for his first episode.
Exactly. And one of my favorite sketches from that era, I didn't even remember totally that Alec was in it. It was from that first episode. It was a John Lovitz carried sketch, The Nude Talk Show, where John Lovitz has this idea. He wants to do a nude talk show because he thinks that it would be super popular. And Alec Baldwin just plays a TV executive, but John Lovitz is really carrying the sketch. But Alec was willing to one of your previous points, he was willing to play with the cast. And whether that meant he was doing this goofy sketch with Jan Hooks, a couple of goofy sketches with Jan Hooks, or he's just kind of playing this TV executive who's greenlighting John Lovitz's idea for a nude talk show.
Yeah, which is something that's kind of hard to come by sometimes, right? Because sometimes like you mentioned before, sometimes you have hosts that come in and they might be, they have the energy, but they don't have the ability to take a step back and let the cast do their thing and let the cast be front and center and just kind of be that vehicle to help serve them and to promote them and, and be that support system for them to shine in these sketches. And so you want a host that can do both, right? Like get you a host that can do both, because you have some that are just completely in the background the entire episode, but then when you have ones that can anchor it, that can support, it just kind of lends itself to being able to be there. And then also to, moving forward with to other great sketches and characters that are to come, to be able to help and support those as well.
That first episode we kind of covered, he just came out with a bang. I mean, I could tell the cast loved him. Even hearing cast members or writers talk about their experience at the show, Alec is one of the first names that comes up as far as good experiences that they've had with hosts or somebody who came on the show and just understood it, just got the show. And I could tell he just impressed them from day one. As far as Alec as a host, what would you like to talk about now? Any sketches, characters that really stick out to you?
Yeah, I don't know if we should get to them right now. I mean, there's obviously there's some obvious ones. We could talk about the Sweaty Balls sketch. I think, it's funny because it's like you get a chance to go back and rewatch some of the sketches that he had, and we'll have a bunch to talk through. God, it's probably a pantheon, like his Mount Rushmore sketches. I mean, he's mentioned later monologues, like that's the one that he's people talk to him about the most. But getting a chance to go back and rewatch that sketch, right? Like the way that it's played, right, with everyone having that like embodying the NPR voice, right, and then being able to have that delivery and being very calm, and then playing off what you're seeing visually happening in the studio versus what the radio listeners are hearing, and all the puns and double entendres, and like it's just like, and you can just, the audience is just loving it, the references, and it's like it's just such a great sketch, and like such a great, it's played so well by Molly, Anna, and Alec, and it's just a great vehicle for great writing. Like I said, great delivery, and it's just like a classic. I mean, you could mention, people love My Sweaty Balls now, and people are like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Wow. I can't wait to get my mouth around this ball.
Ooh, I like the way your balls smell.
Do whatever you want to them, ladies. My balls are here for your pleasure.
Wow, Pete. I have to say your balls are so tender.
Well, there's no beating my balls. They're made from a secret Sweaty family recipe. No one can resist my sweaty balls.
Yeah, it's something that they play. SNL plays when they do Christmas retrospectives. When they need a Christmas episode or whatever, they'll go back and play the Sweaty Balls.
Yeah. And then, I know they recreated it too later with Betty White, but like, I'd probably say that's probably one of his. That's probably at the top of the list from an all-timer standpoint. I have a couple more, but I know if there's anyone that you wanted to talk about, we could talk about that one, but there's a lot of other ones that I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, and I was gonna just to put a button on that sketch. That showed me that he just how well. He has range, and he can play with any cast member who's on the screen. So in that sketch, he really had to be precise and match the energy or lack thereof of Anna Gasteyer and Molly Shannon in that sketch. He kind of had to be a third delicious dish person and match the tempo and the energy and the cadence of that sketch, and he just fit right in. And I think that in lesser hands, a lesser host might have made that sketch awkward. I don't think it would have been memorable. They might have hammed it up too much. They might have put too much emphasis on like, I'm making a double entendre here, wink, wink, notice it. But Alec just kind of let the content speak for itself, and he played just a great straight man. I don't even know to the content, because all three of them were like the straight people.
Right.
Really. You had asked me something else that stood out, something that he did in that episode. So that was the Sweaty Ball sketch, was December 12th, 1998. He also in that episode, and this was actually the third appearance of this, was the Bill Brasky sketches that he did with, he first did them with Will Ferrell, Mark McKinney, and David Koechner. I think John Goodman appeared with him later, but those were just the Bill Brasky sketches just in general, they're just so outlandish to me. Just big characters that probably don't exist in real life. Like there's a kernel of that character that I've seen in real life, like the salesperson type of character, but Alec was so good, and matching somebody like Will Ferrell, matching that sort of energy and big bombastic character just told me a lot about Alec.
Did you know Bill Brasky is the godfather of my son? Bill Brasky? Yeah. He's a big fella, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's a big guy. He's got about 6'7", 385.
Well, anyway, he shows up at the church in his golf pants, caked in mud. But old Bill Brasky pushes aside the priest and says, I'll baptize that piece of calamari. And he pours scotch all over my baby son and says, there, you're baptized.
Yeah, because it is, like you said, the energy of those sketches, and like how it's just kind of the build, it's like there's a kernel of truth in like the characters the characters of the sketch, and then also the person that they're deifying essentially with Bill Brasky, and like all these stories that just kind of build on itself and keep getting bigger and bigger, and like you have to have the right amount of energy in those, and like you said, that's what's one thing that's really great about a host like Alec, is that he can be in a sketch where he can deliver and be great in this calm way, like so with Delicious Dish, and like have that conversation, but then match the energy of a Will Ferrell in the Bill Brasky sketch, and then be able to, go toe to toe, line for line with like a Janet Hooks and like a diner sketch, and, be able to do impressions and, do all kinds of different things. Like it just kind of speaks to why why I think he's the leader of all time for hosting appearances.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're inviting another cast member, the long lost cast member, to join them that week to do the show.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else that sticks out? Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, so I think I guess we can talk about a few more like sketches and stuff, and then we can, talk top line too about it. But I guess kind of mentioned the diner sketch where he's going back and forth to Jen Hooks, and it's just, he's coming in just super confident, he's dressed up, got the cowboy hat on, jean jacket, and, he's just going back and forth and, intense flirting and intense just going back and forth with her.
Can I help you?
Do you have coffee?
Is that a cup?
You think you can fill it?
Think you can handle it?
I can handle a menu.
First look is free.
I never paid for looking yet.
You better watch it, cowboy.
I've been watching it since you walked over here.
Yeah, I couldn't help notice what you were looking at, too.
I'm not looking at anything that ain't showing.
You better keep your eyes on what you're watching instead of what you think is what's showing, because we got rules here, mister. Rules! I'm gonna be right back.
I'll be here.
Okay.
All right.
Good then.
Fine.
Okay.
They're flirting and talking about the double hundred pie and, whether or not, you should not go off on your pie for free. And you got Hartman just sitting there too at the diner, just kind of being like a buffer between her and him. And it's just it's a really fun sketch. And I said, when you have those sketches where you just have two people just going back and forth, and the writing and the energy of that one, I think is a really, really fun one.
Related to the diner sketch, we actually did a Jan Hooks episode, and that was one of our highlights. The Bill Kenny was on with me, and that was one that we definitely highlighted on Jan's part because of just how snappy her delivery was and everything. But Alec, his role in that was to match her snappy delivery. So there's trading barbs and going back and forth. It had to be quick, that quick delivery. Mm-hmm. And I had mentioned Alec matching Molly Shannon on a gas dyer. Here he's matching Jan Hooks as far as snappiness.
Yeah, and I think what's cool about that sketch is that it's gets to the level, but it's an equal. Both parties. She's crushing in that sketch, obviously, and so is he. But like, it's not taking away from the other person, right? Like they're just in that battle. They're locked in, going back and forth, one liner after one liner, back and forth, and there's not this trying to one up the other person. They're both just kind of in that world, going back and forth and keeping the focus on how tight the writing is and the fun and the puns and the double entendres and things like that as they go back and forth, which I think, like I said, it speaks to, the constant theme is, can you come in and play with anybody and then be able to be the leader, be equal, but not trying to outshine other people. I think it's a really great example too.
Great points. And that's something I never thought of. That's being a good scene partner, I think. And that's something that when I've talked to other guests about cast members specifically, the idea has popped up here and there about being a good partner in a scene. It's kind of the improv idea of yes-anding in a certain way. It's kind of along those lines of just being a great scene partner and not wanting to one-up your scene partner, because that in doing so, the comedy will reveal itself even more if you're at the same level. I think that takes a lot of discipline and I guess lack of ego as a performer in many ways.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think kind of got to leave your ego at the door, so to speak, when you come to host and be willing to enjoy, because like I said, if you do go too far, you take away from the writing of the writing of the sketch, and you can distract from it. And if you ham it up too much, or I think it's like the right amount of energy for that sketch. And like I said, it was a great scene partner, to your point, in that sketch.
Yeah, for sure. And that was his first episode as well. So I'm sure somebody like Jan Hooks, who's a wonderful sketch comedian, I'm sure had to be impressed with the work that she did with Alec in that episode. There's one that I want to make sure to talk about, one that I really highlighted. Are you familiar with Buckwell's Follies, when he was the gubernatorial candidate?
No, remind me of that one. I'm sorry.
So he was a gubernatorial candidate, and he just made these unintentional gaffes throughout the sketch.
Ladies and gentlemen of this great state, I come before you, a humble man who hopes only to serve other people. And yes, I've stumbled, I've shot Lassie, I've cursed at an infant, and yes, I've wiped my ass with the American flag. But don't let that define me, don't judge me. Because someday you could find yourself in a similar situation. You could kill Babe, that lovable pig.
Don't talk about Babe like that!
So it was just this escalation that I thought Alec was just so good in. And if you are the listeners, that's season 21, episode 11. The sketch is called Buckwell's Follies, and that's just such a good example of Alec carried that sketch. There were brief appearances by like Will Ferrell here and there, but Alec, that he really, really carried that sketch. And that's just, especially for that season and early on in a new era of SNL, that's one that's always, I go back to and rewatch it's been 12 or 26 years later, and that's a rewatchable sketch big time for me.
I feel like I can rewatch that one. Or watch that one. I guess it's memory hall, that one. I feel like, but that's a good one. I was going to say there's a lot of good, I mean, I think one of the other sketches that I've liked of him, and it's a later one, but it kind of goes back to the making fun of yourself, and it's his play on the Christmas elves, the Glenn Ross. That's where he's essentially playing the same character from, using Glenn Ross, and he's the like head elf, and he is trying to get everyone excited about Christmas and cobbling, and even uses his, the ABC always be cobbling, and then kind of, I don't know if it's a Freudian slip, but does always be closing, and like kind of the cast is losing it a little bit during the sketch, like him and Seth. And just like one of those examples of just like, it's very silly, but it's like it's one of those things, like I said, it's kind of wink at the camera, like having fun with it and kind of pointing to your previous work, but also being able to, deliver in this very silly way, like fully dressed on like an elf and talking to, Amy and Seth, and like just a very silly sketch. But back to the holiday theme, that's always a favorite one of mine to watch during the holidays.
That's one that SNL tends to replay in their holiday episodes as well. I mean, if you weren't a SNL super fan, or if you're less than even a casual fan of SNL, or if you're just getting to know the show and you watched a holiday episode of SNL and they're replaying these sketches, you might think that Alec was a cast member at some point. The way he just kind of pops up in these sketches that SNL showcases during these special episodes. That elf motivation was hilarious. It was such a great play. You're right on the Glenn Ross scene that he was in. That was so good. Skimming through a lot of his episodes, I sometimes forget how many impressions that he did on the show, which is ironic because, I mean, he's famous for his Donald Trump impression, which we don't really have to talk about because, thankfully, honestly, he did it once as a host. So it was his most recent appearance as a host, and he did the Donald Trump impression. That was the only time as a host that he ever did that. But even aside from that, when he was hosting, I mean, he did impressions of Bono. He did Robert De Niro, I thought, really well. Tony Bennett, it was great. So I think just as an impressionist, to be able to rely on a host to come in and you can give him or her an impression and they can deliver it really well, that's such a great gift that a host can bring to the show.
Yeah, and I would say too, like the amount, Trump aside, the joy that he brought to these impressions. Like, I always felt like Tony Bennett was probably one of his favorite ones to do because it's just like such a happy person, and the way he portrays it is just kind of that just happy energy and super positive. And I do that one quite a bit.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I've sung for kings and queens, and one thing's for sure: I love things that are great. I love things that are great. Good things are fantastic. Guess what? I also paint, just a hobby, nothing drastic. 'Cause I dig everything except the things I don't. And I try anything except the things I say I won't. But one thing's for sure, I love things that are great. Yeah. Thank you.
That's something that you typically don't expect from a host, to be able to come in and do a bunch of impressions and be able to be as versatile and as talented to be able to do a bunch of impressions. But the fact that he was able to do some that were really accurate, really reliable, be able to come back to those, I mean, that's a gift too for anybody that's gonna, come in and be a part of the show.
With the Tony Bennett impression specifically, Paula Pell, who was a longtime writer on the show, she helped Alec with that. And she was watching Tony Bennett and they were interviewing him. I think it was some red carpet thing for a movie premiere. And she was watching this and they interviewed Tony Bennett and they asked him, "What'd you think of the movie?" And his response was, "Oh, the movie was great. And I like great things." And she said, you could tell that he probably hadn't seen the movie, but he was just so overtly positive and he thought it was great because he likes great things. And that's just, you saw that those were the types of lines that Alec delivered. So she took that to Alec and Alec just totally made her vision come to fruition on screen. He was so good. He was so good.
But yeah,
Tony Bennett.
with the positivity, like on, times a million, and just happy to be there, just, stoked. And she's a guest and singing, and it was super fun. From an impression standpoint, I mean, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but, obviously I think Trump is the one that he did the most, but, glad it's not overshadowing, like I said, a lot of the great work that he did before then, and just his ability to, whether it was in an official impression or just the characters and the way that he was able to inhabit just types of personalities and people. I thought that he's just a really great, like I said, talented host. There's a silver lining to him being Trump as many times as he was, in terms of, we'll talk about the unofficial cast member standpoint, but it's interesting to me that he was as prolific with all these different areas we're talking about. When you're thinking about what you want from a host, someone who can be a great scene partner, someone who can do impressions, someone who can be a supporting role, someone who can be the lead in a sketch, like able to do all those things, make fun of themselves. Like he was able to do all those things from an impression standpoint and across these different variables, all these different compartments. And like I said, I think he did a really good job. And like I said, it's the reason why he's been there so many times.
Yeah, and throughout the years, as if we didn't need any more proof that Alec loved the show and got the show. I love when the show becomes self-referential in a lot of ways.
Yes.
This happened when he developed a little feud, quote unquote, with Steve Martin as far as their hosting gigs. So the way the way they played off of each other in a lot of those sketches. I mean, the Platinum Lounge, it was Alec's 13th time hosting in 2006, and this Platinum Lounge sketch that he did with Steve Martin was just like so good.
It's like really multiple legends, right, in that sketch. And it's so funny because I will say I love the Five Timers Lounge sketches in general. Just that format, and like whenever someone's close to five getting in there, we go to the Platinum Lounge, taking it the step further. I mean, it starts so great. I love him, Alec coming in and with Maya, and she's like, I don't know if I should be here. And, Hader comes in and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, no, working Catherine was going to be here. And he's like, oh, sorry, Maya tried, after saying he would, support, do everything he can to help a friend. And then like I said, with him and Steve Martin going back and forth. And I just love that is kind of built in as canon for them, like on the world to show that there are these rivals that are going back and forth and are actively trying to undermine each other, or in this case, kill each other, kind of thing.
Here we go.
Hey, wait. Isn't that John Goodman?
No.
Hey, I was in sweaty balls. And I tied your record, 13 shows, so excuse me.
Wait a minute. Did you say you hosted 13 times? I hosted 14 times.
14? Wait a minute, let's see. October 23rd, 1976, February 26th, 1977, September 4th, 1978, 3 times in 1978. Oh my God, you're right. Wow. 14 times? I'm sorry about that, Steve.
No, I apologize. I mean, I tried to kill you, and that's so wrong today.
The same dynamic, too, even with like Martin Short coming in and just like crowd loves it. And Steve Martin's just like sad, as soon as he leaves the screen. So they just had that kind of back and forth. And it's just a really fun way, like I said, for them to, have that meta conversation about what it's like to be hosting on the show that many times and having that friendly rivalry in terms of who's going to be on top multiple times, whether it's through monologues or through this sketch. But like those two going back and forth and trying to outwit each other. It's just a really fun sketch. And I thought it was a really, really well done. And Paul McCartney popping up, just to add to it. It's like, but what did you think about that sketch? Did you, I like that one as well.
It's interesting to see Alec Baldwin working with someone who I feel is a comedic genius in Steve Martin and going toe to toe. Alec's not just a funny person for an actor. Alec is a genuine, I think, comedian. Even if not all of his movies are comedic, that showed me that Alec can be viewed as a comedian. And that was just I think around that time, 30 Rock was either about to premiere or it did premiere. And that coupled with 30 Rock, that sketch coupled with 30 Rock just showed to me that Alec needs to be called genuinely a comedian, being able to go toe to toe with Steve Martin. I know you brought up 30 Rock, and we're talking about Alec's Hall of Fame candidacy as a host, but I mean, talk about him on 30 Rock. I think that's related to his work on SNL.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think when you look at 30 Rock, there's obviously a lot of fans. There's a lot of crossover, understandably so, between SNL fans and 30 Rock fans. With him being such an integral part of 30 Rock, I just thought that his Jack Donaghy, I think, is just a great character. He played as an all-timer. And I think when you look at the role that Tina Fey played on the show, obviously a Hall of Famer, and she is probably, if she's not the best, she's one of the best writers to ever come out of SNL. And so her tapping him and giving him that unofficial approval, like in her first, official vehicle outside the show and saying, I want Alec to be a part of this, getting that, nod, I think kind of adds to the fact that he was someone who was so great on SNL, because that's someone who obviously got a chance to work with and see behind the scenes and how they work and what they bring in and what they put into the craft and how funny they are and their versatility and what he could bring to the characters that she was forming for the show. And so I think that you see the same thing with him on 30 Rock. Like he brings that same level of great acting. He can be serious, dramatic. He does impressions. He all does within the realm of Jack, but is able to inhabit this character who is working amongst a bunch of comedians and is still able to be a genuinely hilarious person as this high level executive, but still be able to provide that comic relief and keep up with your Tina Feys, your Tracy Morgans, your Jack Krakowski's. Like, he's still in that mix, and he's not just in the background. He's a lot of times, the vehicle for the humor in the show too. So I think he just kind of, there's a lot of crossover there, but I think, like I said, his work there speaks to how great he did on SNL and why he got the nod to be in such a important part of that show.
His portrayal of Jack Donaghy to me is a masterclass of dry humor. And that's so up my alley. I mean, you're talking to someone who, as a kid, my favorite cast member was Phil Hartman, who had a lot of that dry delivery.
Yeah.
And Alec, as Jack Donaghy, his just dry, no nonsense sense of humor and delivery just spoke to me big time. And that's just such, like I said, just such a masterclass in that type of humor. That's not always, that it doesn't always resonate, I guess, with just like somebody who's not like a comedy geek or whatever. But many of us, I'm sure, you're included in that, will just appreciate that type of humor so much.
Yeah. And I think one thing to that point, I think why, people who appreciate comedy, like, like yourself, me, like, and people listening, when you do have someone who has a dry sense of humor, you have to be paying attention to find it. And it's not self-serving. It's not looking to bring attention to you. You kind of have to be paying attention. And with this character on Third with Jack, he's always just like a zinger, and I'm on to the next. Like, gonna zing you. You got it. You didn't. We're just gonna keep on moving, and it's never, a lot of times not grandiose. It's just kind of like dry sense of humor. Drop a nugget, keep it moving, but still able to go fast paced. And I think 30 Rock, I want to say, I don't know if this still holds, but at the time, I think had the most jokes per minute from a TV show. And so that pace, and being able to keep up with that, I mean, that is something you don't just hand out to any actor that can be a part of that and be able to be in that role. So it kind of speaks to how he's able to be himself, and that drives him to keep up and keep it coming all the time.
Yeah, and even when Jack Donaghy's not throwing out zingers, even when he's just being serious, like I think of when Liz Lemon asked Jack, he's being fitted for a tux, and she's writing some material for him, and she thinks it's that evening.
We'll get to your problem in a minute. Have you had a chance to think of my zinger?
Well, it's almost Thanksgiving, everybody, and I know what this crowd's giving thanks for. Estate tax reform.
That is terrific. I really enjoyed that. But do you think it's too topical? Damn, I wish this event were tonight.
It's not tonight. When is it?
February.
Why are you wearing a tux?
It's after 6. What am I, a farmer?
And he's totally serious about that. Yeah. He's not trying to zing anybody. That's just who he is. And Alec plays that just with such straight, like he's not overcommitting and trying to tell the audience, like, here's the joke. Like, he's within his character, just being who his character is, and then the comedy is mined out of that. And I think him being on 30 Rock, Tina Fey hiring him to play Jack Donaghy speaks a lot to how she viewed him as a host on SNL, what she thought of his comedic chops. That's the stamp of approval.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the phrase I was looking for earlier. The stamp of approval that he got from her, I think, is incredibly important. And like I said, as someone who is, part of SNL lore, when someone, I think we always root for people that leave the show if they have their individual projects, root for them to do well. And so him being able to be a part of, one of Tina's first, after officially leaving the show and everything, I think was really important. And he did a great job. He crushed it.
So Alec hasn't hosted since February 2017, and what we've said, he made numerous appearances as Trump, for better or for worse, around that time. We do have to say, tragically, in October 2021, he fired what was supposed to be a prop gun on the set of a movie, and it killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins. And there's been a lot of discussion as to what happened. An innocent woman died due to on-set negligence, and that's what we know. And Alec was named in the lawsuit, one of a few people that was named, that was filed by Helena Hutchins' husband. And they settled in October of 2022, and the film Rust will resume filming in January of 2023. So if and when the show's ready for another Alec appearance, would that be something that you would look forward to? I know I'll kind of break the ice and say I actually would look forward to this myself. Is that something that you would look forward to?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would look forward to it. I think, obviously the situation with On the Rust set is really tragic, and, family lost someone they really loved, and that's just, it's hard to move past that. But I think for Alec, I think alums of the show too, when he's ready, and I think out of respect for the family, he's not going to be on anytime soon. Maybe he'll have to make a cameo at some point in time, but I think I would welcome him coming back. I mean, he's the all-time leader for hosting for a reason. And I think that SNL has proven over and over again that it's the place that you can come back to. When whatever someone has gone through or caused, personally, it has provided that kind of safe haven for someone to come back and be welcomed with open arms and be able to kind of, whether it's they've been out of the public limelight for one to kind of start getting back into it, or they just need that embrace from the fans. I think that it's provided to be a soft landing spot for people. And I know that he would get a lot of love. I think it's just a matter of when the timing is right for him. But we've seen it most recently with like, say John Mulaney, right? Like has a lot of personal stuff going on, but it's a place you can always come back to. And I think that whenever he decides to, I mean, I think people would be excited and would be rooting for him, and it might be a good way for him. I think sometimes too, he's had it before with personal stuff he's had with divorces and things like that. This is far more serious than a divorce, don't get me wrong, but like to be able to say, all right, I think I'm ready. I think whenever that happens and the time is right, I think people will welcome them back for sure with open arms.
And I think for younger viewers or maybe people who just got into the show within the last 5 years and really only know Alec as the guy who played Trump, I think appearing on the show as a host again might go a long way to kind of shed that Trump stench that he's kind of associated with now. Like, to me, it's a bit of a shame as far as SNL goes that, he's one of the handful of all-time great hosts, but he'll be most synonymous possibly with a certain segment of viewers as the guy who played Trump on SNL. So I think another appearance, as you said, like if and when everybody's ready for that, I think if anything, to shed that association with playing Trump, I think personally would be a good thing to see.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the thing I was wanted to say and add to that earlier, like there's being associated with that time period and everything, like, and being with Trump as a character on the show and as an impression, we talk about like there being a silver lining. And I know we're talking about, Hall of Fame candidacy here and why someone should, and, trying to be as objective as possible. I think that a lot of times we talk about hosts and we say, oh, this person could totally be a cast member. Like that's an unofficial cast member. And I think Alec is one of the few who could say, like, I was basically a cast member. I was the show at a time when they needed to address something that was going on topically, domestically, internationally. He was the person that they went to that well, regardless of if they went to it too much or too little. Other people can debate that, right? But like at a time when it was needed, he was that person. And I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think when he accepted that role, he was probably thinking it would be similar to Tina doing Sarah Palin, right? No, this is going to happen. This is not a 4-year commitment. I'm going to do this. It'll be fun. And then we can move on with our lives. And to be able to say, all right, this happened and still be that committed to the show. I mean, I think that just also shows it's coming to the show, because he could have very easily said, sorry, like I didn't plan on doing this for this long. Like I'm not going to do it anymore. And so I think the fact that he was treated basically as a cast member, showing up almost every single week, being able to, go to that well and be able to provide that support system for the show until they could get someone to, now you have JJ, obviously, is doing a more accurate, less cartoonish version of Trump. But I think, that time to transition, especially with a lot of stuff going on in the world, I think he has to get credit for being one of the few hosts that can say, nah, I basically was a cast member.
That's such a good point as far as his portrayal of Trump is just kind of, you can just see that a lot of it was out of love and respect for Lorne and for the show. So that's a check in on Alec Baldwin's hosting resume, and just SNL kind of person associated with SNL kind of resume. If you had to sum up here your reasons and Alec's SNL Hall of Fame candidacy, like how would you kind of put a button on all of this?
So I think, if we're looking at Hall of Fame candidacies and what it takes to be in the Hall of Fame, I think we've obviously had some great nominees. So the thing that I would say for Alec is when you're looking at the totality of the appearances, right? A lot of times you look at most Hall of Fames, if we're looking at sports, hey, most points scored overall, most home runs hit, like those kinds of large numbers, if they're done over time, people can say, well, they were just there for a long time. But you look at the quality of appearances, not just being number one overall. It wasn't like he was just they were just wheeling him out there and like, he'll be in the sketches and we're just going to celebrate him. He was an active part across many generations with characters that people know and appreciate. He's, like I said, one of the few hosts that can say that who's an unofficial cast member. He has memorable lines, whether you're talking about or memorable impressions, talking about Tony Bennett. If you're talking about classic lines, no one can resist my sweaty balls. I mean, you could say that probably 10, 50 years from now, people know what you're talking about. So being able to be there across multiple generations, quality of appearances, classic moments, and then also there during a time when the show really needed him. I think all those things kind of go to why he is, if nothing else, the leading host appearances of all time for good reason. And I don't think those are empty calories. So I think that he deserves the opportunity to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah. Thank you to Casey Lyons for those tasty, tasty licks. We have got a hell of a decision to make now, don't we? Alec Baldwin, do you include him in the Hall of Fame as a first ballot Hall of Famer? Like, let's be clear. He's going into the Hall of Fame. He has to go into the Hall of Fame. I can't imagine a Hall of Fame where he's not there because there's too much of the story of SNL that would remain to be told without him there. The question is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? That's the question. And we'll have to wait and see. Have you registered to vote? If you haven't registered to vote, please do so, or you won't be able to vote when the time comes. And that would be a crying shame. Let's listen to a great sketch now. It was talked about by Will and Thomas in the delightful conversation they had. This is the Elf sketch. ELF, not Elf. Hey, Willie. No, I can't do that. Hey, Willie. No, can't do it. No, I'm not even going to try. Oh, my gosh. I used to be able to do a mean elf. Like, not a mean elf, like just an elf, you know? Anyway, this is the Elf sketch that they brought up in the conversation they just had. So let's go to it now.
So what's this meeting about?
I don't know. It better be about our tools. My hammer is falling apart in my hands.
Elves can't build with tools like this.
I'll never be done with my toys by Christmas.
Everyone settle down. This is Winter's Breath. He's an elf from the home office.
Can I have your attention for a moment because you're talking about what? You're talking about the hammer? Bitching about the quality of your wood, some pixie you're trying to screw. Let's talk about something important. Put that cocoa down.
What?
Cocoa is for cobblers only. You think I'm screwing around? I am not screwing around. I am here from Kris Kringle. I'm here from the North Pole, and I am on a mission of mercy. Your name is Honeydew?
Yeah?
And you call yourself an elf, you son of a bitch?
Hey, I don't have to listen to this.
You certainly don't, pal, because the good news is you're fired. The bad news is you've got 1 week to regain your jobs, starting with tonight's build. Oh, have I got your attention now? Good. Because we're adding a little something to this month's toy contest. As you know, first prize is a shiny new toboggan. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a box of candy canes. Third prize is you're fired. Everybody get the picture? You laughing now? Huh? You got tools. Santa paid good money for those tools. You can't build with the tools you have. You can't build garbage. You are garbage. Hit the bricks, pal, and beat it because you are going out.
Hey, our tools are weak.
Your tools are weak? The effing tools are weak. You're weak. I've been in this business for 615 years.
Hey, what's your name?
Screw you. That's my name. And you want to know why, mister? Because you rode a hedgehog to work, and I got here on a talking moose. That's my name. Remember, boys and girls, always, A, always, B, B, C, closing. Always be always be cobbling, always be cobbling.
That's incredible.
What's the problem, pal?
Well, I mean, you're such a hero. You're so rich. Why are you coming down here and wasting your time with a bunch of bums?
You see this gumdrop? You see this gumdrop? This gumdrop costs more than the mushroom you call a house. You see, pal, that's who I am, and you're nothing. Nice guy, I don't care. Good father, elf for you. Go home and play with your kids. You want to work here? Cobble. I can sit here tonight with the tools you got, make myself 15 train sets tonight in 2 hours. Can you? Can you?
No.
Get mad, you sons of bitches, get mad. You know what it takes to be One of Santa's elves, it takes brass balls to be an elf. The tools are out there. Build with the tools, you know? I got no sympathy for you. And you know what you'll be saying? Bunch of losers sitting around the reindeer shed, drinking fermented dew out of acorn caps. Oh, yeah. I used to be one of Santa's elves. It's a tough racket. These are the new tools.
Whoa.
These are the new Glengarry line of power tools. And to you, they're gold. And you don't get them. Why? Because to give them to you is just throwing them away. They're for cobblers. I wish you good luck, but you wouldn't know what to do with it if you got it. And to answer your question, pal, I'm here because Santa asked me to be here as a favor. I said the real favor, follow my advice and fire your elfin ass because a loser is a loser. Oh, and one more thing. You all get holiday bonuses. It's still Christmas.
That is dynamite. That is absolutely dynamite. What a great sketch. If you're familiar with the source material, it makes it that much richer, but you don't need to be. It's just fantastic on its own. That was Alec Baldwin in a sketch called Elf Motivation. And I think it seals the deal for his candidacy, quite frankly. Will Norman, thank you so much for joining us this week. For Thomas Sena and Matt Ardill, I am the host and curator of the hall, Jamie Dew. And please, if you'll do me one favor, on your way out, as you're walking past it, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNLHOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
Podcasts and such.